Good evening, everyone. So, work with me here. I want you to close your eyes and imagine a refugee, okay? For 2-3 seconds. And then think about a couple of things. The first one is, where does he or she live? And what sorts of facilities do you think they use? Okay? So hold that thought, and now open your eyes. So, if that is what you saw, hold up your hands. The reality is that of the total registered refugee population in the world, which is 22.5 million, 66% of those, 2/3, live in cities. They do not live in camps, okay? So we're gonna try and work through what does this mean for those places and spaces and cities where these refugees live. Now, global migration patterns have been with us for a long time. You know, people move for all sorts of reasons. They move because they want a bigger house, they move because they might fear persecution, they might move because of famine, they might move because of disease, they might move because they seek a better quality of life. So all of those are valid reasons. And these reasons change from country to country. So if we take Kampala, for example, the capital of Uganda, a small city now, has a refugee population of about 100 million, 100,000, I do apologize. And that city is projected to grow to 20 million people by the year 2040. And if you look historically, people have moved again there for all sorts of reasons. Some live in camps, but the majority of those 100,000 people actually live in the city. And the same is true in Colombia, you know. And now we're in a terrific position. We were talking about technology earlier, and you know, we could use technology to help us visualize where people move and how they move across towns and cities within the space of a country. You know, whether they're internally displaced or whether they move out of their own will. And this gives us a great idea of the sorts of things that people seek as they move around countries and within the same country. So we go back to the point of where refugees live. And I want you, the reason I said it is not a camp is because I want you to think urban. And this is something that a whole lot of people out there have been working on, including those working in the humanitarian sector. So those individuals and organizations that work with refugees are urging us to think urban, because again, they recognize that most of the refugee population, the registered refugee population, is an urban population, okay? And we can look at, we'll talk a bit later on about the Syrian refugee population in Jordan, which is the country I come from. And you know, out of that population, the registered population, 80% of which lives in the capital city. And that has huge implications for the cities, for the services that the city has to offer its residents and inhabitants of all shapes and sizes. So, cities are unique. And why are cities unique? You know, I'm an urban planner, and I kind of recognize that. To me, it makes perfect sense. You know, cities are places where lots of people live. It's where there is a lot of diversity. There are different systems of government. There are formal markets and informal markets. And then there are all sorts of services that need coordination. You know, there's the police, there's the fire service, there's, you know, all sorts of things that make cities tick. You know, there's the transport system. All of these need coordination. And in that sense, cities are unique places. But then this opens up a different kettle of fish, so to speak, to work with. You know, the idea of urban displacement and urban migration coming together in cities means we could do a lot of things differently, the way we work with our cities, at least. And why is that? It's because cities normally have a trajectory. You know, they do plans. They plan for the year 2030, 2040, 2050. But then suddenly, you know, they have to work with, say, an influx of, I don't know, you know, 500,000 refugees coming into the city. So that trajectory is then derailed, or at least it has to adapt, okay? And this is where the concept of resilience comes in. So where a city has to adapt in order to make sure that it continues to offer the services and the coordination with citizens is the, if you like, the innate capacity of urban resilience. So urban resilience, as you know, we who work with it to define it, we talk about the capacity of not only cities, but we talk about the capacities of individuals, of communities, of institutions, of businesses, and of governments, okay, and state institutions, because they have to survive, adapt, and grow, again, no matter what chronic shocks and acute stresses come their way. You know, we do not want them to be derailed of their trajectory, because we need to make sure that cities continue to offer all of those services. So, if we take the example of Jordan, you know, one of the countries with, if you like, the highest refugee to host ratio, we talked about Syrian refugees. There's about 657,000 registered refugees by UNHCR in the country, and 80% of those live in the city of Amman. Now, that means a lot in terms of the capacity of the city in order to be able to take in, as a city, those refugees, and for the systems in the city to then be able to offer, if you like, the services that those residents, because they have become residents of the city, can expect. Amman, if we just look at the statistics, was a city of 2 million people 10 years ago. This year, it's a city of 4.4 million population. Part of that is the refugee influx, and part of it is natural growth. The issue is, across the Middle East, is that we have a very young population. You know, I think these stats will tell you that probably under 60% of the population of Jordan is below the age of 25. You know, so that means huge investments coming in over the next few years. And what that means is that investment also needs to take into account and work with the refugee population. So any investment that benefits the Jordanian population has to also work for refugees. It has to cater for women. It has to cater for young people. And this means that the city apparatuses, the city government, has to work with development bodies, has to work with the humanitarian sector, and has to work with international donors. And for cities, this is a new way of working. Okay? Cities are not used to work within this context. But cities recognize that then they are melting pots. You know, they recognize that unless they put in all of this investment, social tensions will blow over the surface. And then that creates a different kind of crisis that cities and central governments have to work with. So in a way, it's in the best interest of cities, and it's something that the humanitarian sector absolutely recognizes. Because ultimately, because all of these things happen in cities, because refugees are part of the community in the city, you know, for us, they are our neighbors, they are our co-workers, and perhaps, you know, perhaps they can also be our friends in the city. Thank you.